Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Okay, so vitamin K. We all kind of know it helps our blood clot, right? That seems like basic knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. It's the go-to fact about it.
But get this, there's some really interesting new research popping up. It suggests this vitamin, the kind you get from things like kale, Brussels sprouts, those leafy greens,
Right.
it might actually have a much bigger role to play, especially when it comes to our memory and, how we learn as we age.
Exactly. We're not just talking blood clotting anymore. We're talking potential brain impacts.
Brains. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So for this deep dive, we're really going to unpack a fascinating recent study. It was published in the Journal of Nutrition.
Okay.
And we'll also pull in some related insights from Tufts University. They're both digging into this possible connection between vitamin K intake and how well our brains are working, particularly later in life.
So trying to figure out if getting enough of this vitamin helps keep our minds sharp.
That's the core idea. Understanding if vitamin K plays a protective role for our cognition.
All right. So this study in the Journal of Nutrition, what was the main question? What were the researchers trying to figure out?
Well, they really wanted to get under the hood,
Yeah.
to understand the biological mechanisms, the how and why vitamin K might affect our thinking, our memory.
The actual nuts and bolts in the brain.
Precisely. They specifically looked at what happens if vitamin K intake is low. How does that impact the ability to learn new things, remember stuff?
And how do they test that? You can't exactly put people on a super low vitamin K diet for months, can you?
No, exactly. So for this kind of mechanistic study, they used mice.
Ah, okay. Mice. Makes sense. So what did the experiment look like?
They took 60 middle-aged mice, important detail, middle-aged both males and females, and for 6 whole months, half of them got a diet specifically low in vitamin K.
And the other half?
The other half got a normal, standard mouse diet as a control group.
Right.
And they were really focused on one particular form of vitamin K. It's called mannakinone 4,
Mannakinone 4, why that one?
because that's the main type of vitamin K actually found in the brain tissue itself.
Got it. So 6 months in the different diets. Then what?
So after the 6 months, the mice were about 15 months old, which is, getting older for a mouse.
Right.
They put some of them through a series of behavioral tests designed to measure learning and memory.
Mouse IQ tests, basically.
Sort of, yeah. And then after the tests, they examined the brain tissue of all the mice very closely.
Okay, how do you test a mouse's memory? What do these tests actually involve?
They're quite clever, actually.
Yeah.
One is called the Novel Object Recognition Test.
Novel object. Okay.
So mice are naturally curious. If you put a familiar object and a new object in their space, they'll usually spend more time checking out the new one.
Makes sense.
So the researchers measure how much time the mice spend exploring the new thing versus the old one. If they don't spend much more time with the new object, it suggests they might not remember the old one very well.
Ah, okay. A sign of weaker memory. What was the other test?
The other was the Morris water maze.
Water maze. Sounds dramatic.
It's basically a small pool of cloudy water with a hidden platform just under the surface. Mice don't love swimming, so they're motivated to find the platform.
Right.
The researchers track how long it takes the mice to learn where that hidden platform is over several attempts. It's a good test of spatial learning and memory.
Okay, so if the low vitamin K mice struggled with the new object or took ages to find the platform, that would point towards cognitive issues.
Exactly. That's the hypothesis.
So spill the beans. What did the study actually find? Did the diet make a difference?
It really did. The results were quite striking. First, they confirmed it. The mice on the low vitamin K diet had way lower levels of that mannakinone 4 in their brains, like significantly lower.
Okay, so the diet definitely impacted brain levels. What about the behavior?
That's where it got really interesting. In the object recognition test, the low K mice, they spent less time exploring the new object. Suggests poor recognition memory.
And the water maze.
They took significantly longer to learn the platform's location, so issues with spatial learning too.
Wow. Okay, so clear differences in how well their brains seem to be working based on those tests.
Yeah, noticeable cognitive difficulties.
But they didn't stop there, right? You said they looked at the brain tissue itself. Went deeper.
That's right. They looked specifically at the hippocampus.
Ah, the hippocampus. That's super important for memory, isn't it?
Absolutely critical, especially for forming new memories and for learning. And within the hippocampus, they zoomed in on an area called the dentate gyrus.
Dentate gyrus, okay.
And here's what they found. The low vitamin K mice had fewer actively dividing cells there.
Dividing cell. You mean new cells being made?
Exactly. The dentate gyrus is one of the very few places in the adult brain where we get neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons.
Oh.
And they found fewer of these brand new immature neurons in the mice that weren't getting enough vitamin K.
So literally fewer new brain cells being made in the memory center. That sounds like a pretty big deal.
It really does seem significant, doesn't it? Think of it as hindering the brain's natural ability to refresh and build new memory pathways.
Was that the only change they saw in the brain tissue?
No, there was another important piece. They also found more activated microglia in the brains of the vitamin K deficient mice.
Microglia. Those are the brain's immune cells, right?
That's them. They're like the brain's cleanup crew and first responders. When they become activated like this, it's often a sign of neuroinflammation.
Inflammation in the brain. That can't be good.
Generally, no. Chronic neuroinflammation is increasingly linked to age-related cognitive decline and other brain issues. It's like the brain's defense system is stuck in overdrive, potentially causing collateral damage.
So let me get this straight. The low vitamin K mice had trouble learning and remembering.
Right.
And in their brains, they had less new cell growth in the memory region and more signs of inflammation.
You got it. That's the pattern they observed. A kind of double whammy, potentially.
That sounds pretty concerning for brain health.
Mhm.
Did they notice anything else? Any other maybe unexpected findings?
Yes, actually. One more thing that was quite surprising. The male mice on the low vitamin K diet, they had a significantly lower survival rate
Really? They didn't live as long.
compared to the control males and also compared to all the female mice, regardless of their diet.
Just the males on the low K diet? That's specific.
Yeah.
And was it because of bleeding issues, given vitamin K's main job?
That's what you might expect, right? But interestingly, no. The researchers specifically noted they didn't observe any signs of bleeding in the mice that died early. So the reason for the lower survival in those males isn't immediately obvious from a simple clotting perspective.
Huh. That is unexpected. Adds another layer of mystery.
Definitely something that needs more looking into.
Okay, so we've got this picture. Lower vitamin K in the brain linked to poorer memory, less new neuron growth, more inflammation, and this weird survival difference in males. What are the big takeaways here? What does this all potentially mean, especially when we think about humans?
Well, the findings strongly suggest that getting enough vitamin K could be pretty important for maintaining good learning and memory functions, potentially as we age.
Okay.
The researchers think the cognitive decline they saw in the mice might be directly tied to that reduction in neurogenesis. The brain just wasn't making new neurons as effectively in the hippocampus.
And the inflammation.
And the increased neuroinflammation likely plays a role too, contributing to that less than ideal environment for brain function. It paints a picture where insufficient vitamin K might impair the brain's ability to repair and regenerate while also promoting a state of chronic irritation.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Could this be a factor in why some people experience memory issues as they get older? Could low vitamin K be part of that puzzle?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while this is a mouse study, the researchers do point towards some intriguing human data that seems to align.
Oh, what?
They mention results from something called the Rush Memory and Aging Project. It's a big long-term observational study of older adults. And apparently, when researchers looked at the brains of participants after they passed away, they found an association. People who had higher concentrations of that menaquinone 4 in their brain tissue tended to have had better cognitive function during their later years.
Interesting. So higher K in the brain linked to better thinking ability in humans, too.
It's an association, yes. Now, it's crucial to remember this doesn't prove cause and effect in humans.
Right. Correlation isn't causation.
Exactly. But it provides some really valuable real-world human context that fits with the biological story emerging from the mouse study. It suggests the mouse findings might be relevant.
Okay, that link to human data is definitely thought-provoking. But we do need to circle back to the limitations, right? It was a study in mice. How careful do we need to be about applying this to ourselves?
Very careful. That's always the caveat with animal research. First off, it was middle-aged rodents. Their aging process, their whole biology, it's not identical to ours.
So what works or doesn't work for them might be different for us.
Precisely. We can't just assume a direct translation to human aging without dedicated human studies. Second, that human data from the Rush Project. It's observational.
Meaning it shows a link, but maybe something else is causing both higher vitamin K and better cognition.
Exactly right. Maybe people with higher vitamin K levels also had healthier diets overall, or exercise more, or had other lifestyle factors protecting their brains. The mouse study helps explore the potential biological how, but we need human clinical trials to really confirm if vitamin K itself is making the difference and why.
Absolutely. We need to connect those dots carefully. So what are the experts who actually did this research saying? What's their take on it all? What do they advise?
Well, Sarah Booth, she's the director of the Nutrition Research Center on Aging at Tufts, and the senior author on the paper, she puts it in context. She highlights that, we know K is vital for blood clotting, and there's growing evidence it might be good for heart health, maybe joint health too.
Right.
And she says this new work adds to the idea that it could also be really important for brain function, especially since brain function tends to decline with age. She feels vitamin K seems to offer some kind of protective effect for the brain.
A protective effect. Okay. And what about the lead author, Tong Zheng?
Tong Zhang really emphasizes their goal was to understand the underlying biology. How does vitamin K potentially protect the brain?
The mechanisms again.
Yes, by figuring out these mechanisms like the impact on neurogenesis and inflammation, the long-term hope is to maybe find targeted ways to support brain health as people get older. He specifically points to that link they found. Impaired neurogenesis seemed connected to the cognitive decline, and so did the increased microglia activation, the inflammation signal.
Okay, so they're building a case for how it might work. Now, the big practical question, based on seeing these effects in mice, are they telling us all to, run out and buy vitamin K supplements?
Absolutely not. And they are very clear about this. Both Booth and Zhang strongly advise against starting vitamin K supplements based just on this animal study.
Okay, that's important. No supplement rush.
Definitely not. They really stress the importance of getting vitamin K and other nutrients the old-fashioned way, through a healthy, balanced diet.
So focusing on food first. What kinds of foods are we talking about for vitamin K?
They specifically call out those leafy green vegetables, things like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, kale, spinach, even green peas.
The usual suspects for healthy eating, basically.
Pretty much. These foods are good sources of a form of vitamin K called phylloquinone, and our bodies can then convert that phylloquinone into the menaquinone 4 that's predominantly found in the brain.
Ah, so eating the greens gives our body the building blocks.
That's the idea. So the advice isn't about pills, it's about making sure those nutrient-dense vegetables are a regular part of your diet.
Got it. Food first.
Exactly. And Dr. Booth also mentioned something interesting about collaboration. Her team at Tufts, doing these animal model studies, is working closely with the scientists at Rush University Medical Center, the ones doing the human observational studies.
Ah, connecting the animal research with the human data.
Yes. They believe combining those approaches, digging into the biology in controlled models, and observing patterns in human populations is the best way to really understand and hopefully, eventually, improve long-term brain health.
That makes a lot of sense, looking at it from multiple angles to get a clearer picture. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. If we boil it down, what's the key message people should take away from this deep dive on vitamin K and the brain?
I think the main takeaway is that this new mouse research adds significant weight to the idea that vitamin K status might matter for cognitive function. It gives us a plausible biological story involving neurogenesis, new brain cell growth, and neuroinflammation.
So a potential mechanism for how vitamin K could impact learning and memory, at least in mice.
Right. It deepens our understanding of that possible link.
And the strong advice from the researchers is?
Focus on a healthy diet rich in vitamin K-containing foods, especially those leafy greens. Don't jump to supplements based on this study alone.
Eat your greens.
Yeah.
The classic advice holds true.
Seems that way. Nourishing your body well is usually the best strategy.
This has definitely been fascinating. It really makes you think, if vitamin K might be playing this role, what other maybe overlooked nutritional factors could be having these surprisingly big impacts on our long-term brain health, our cognitive resilience as we age?
That's a great question.
And maybe more importantly, what kind of research do we really need in humans to start untangling these complex connections and figure out what truly helps keep our minds sharp over the long haul? Something to mull over.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.